Of all the weird myths, what seems most plausible and why? Story 1. I've never witnessed any genuine psychic ability firsthand, but I love the story from the NoFX autobiography, The Hepatitis Bathtub. The guitarist got arrested for trying to counterfeit money, and while being interrogated, he stonewalled every cop and detective all the way up the chain. Eventually, the cops brought an unknown person into the room, who sat in the corner and stared at the floor with his eyes closed, pinching the bridge of his nose. The cops tell the guitarist not to look at or acknowledge the man, just pay attention to their questions. So he describes having the unmistakable belief that the guy in the corner was trying to read his mind. As the cops are interrogating him, he remains silent but focuses really hard on playing a Daffy Duck cartoon on a loop in his head. Eventually, he sees the mysterious guy in the corner shake his head in frustration, and a cop walks over, and he overhears the guy say, "He knows what I'm doing." "No, I'm not getting anything. All I'm getting is a duck." Story 2. Aliens. If we won the greatest lottery draw of all time in creation, I believe that in the universe's infinite domain, there exists another planet or even a few who won similar to us, perhaps somewhere else in the corner of the universe out of sight, but like infinitely far away from us, so we probably will never come into contact with them, but the chances they do exist is most likely. What's crazy is that with the new telescope, it allows us to see further and deeper into space with better clarity. However, because of how time and speed of light works, we can only view things in the past, like 13 billion, or a million was it, years ago. So even if we discovered life, it's also probably most likely that they have gone extinct. But I suppose mankind's greatest question would be answered once and for all. I don't think we will ever find out the answer to this either. I doubt our own civilization will be around in the next 1,000 years, not without some major technological and scientific boom occurring like the Bronze and Iron Age type thing. I also doubt our planet will be able to sustain itself for that long either, and not to mention the possibility of all-out nuclear war someday. I'll be glad if I can live a good 50 to 60 more years, have children, beat Sephiroth when the final chapter of FF7 Remake comes out, and then die peacefully. But who knows? Maybe a miracle will happen and somehow we find our answers. Story 3. Probably Noken. It is a Norwegian creature who appears in ponds and lures children close and drowns them. It was probably a serial killer back in the medieval times. Reminds me of the Slavic Rusalka. There's variants of it, but my favorite is the gorgeous red-haired woman that waits by the river to coax you into tangling you up and drowning you. Seems to be a similar thing. Yeah, bodies of water can look nice and be tempting, but be careful around them as they can also drown you. Story 4. I like to think I'm a rational person, but I really feel that there are people out there with certain extrasensory, psychic abilities. None of them are the ones on TV telling you about it, or charging for it though. I swear to God, I can feel this happening to me at certain times. I will know something that's about to happen with zero doubt in my mind, even though it seems like a total guess, and am not surprised when it comes true. The best one was when I said out loud in a group of friends, "That crane is going to fall," before it started even moving. Then 5 seconds later, it tried to pick up some construction materials and collapse. Got mad witnesses on that one. Story 5. Multiple alternative universes and worlds. Quantum immortality. And those thoughts ultimately influence reality around us. I don't believe there is only one world. Where do we go when we die? Why are there so many stories of people who experienced death and then just woke up like nothing happened? Even in my own life, I experience and notice things that just seem so out of the ordinary. Story 6. I am not religious, but the deluge myth is a story you can find all around the world, be it Europe, Asia, and even indigenous tribes of the Amazon forest. Of course, it might be because water is a powerful symbol and floods are a pretty common occurrence, but the myth of the world being flooded and divine intervention deciding what was saved from the waters and what was destroyed is seriously everywhere. Story 7. For Bigfoot. Have you ever heard of Portlock, Alaska? It's also known as Port Chatham and was a small canary town on the end of the Kenai Peninsula that was built in the late 1700s and eventually got a post office in town, making it pretty much official. By 1930, things were going great in the town, but then rumors were seeping out throughout the peninsula that something was wrong with the town. People started to go missing at a very alarming rate by either people going hunting or pretty much anywhere near the forest, near the town. And the people who did eventually show up again were always found dead and mutilated in a nearby lagoon from the rain washing their bodies down the mountain. Then people reported seeing a big hairy man in or by the woods, and people speculated that it had to be a bear or something that was doing this. Then sometime the natives of the Kenai Peninsula came and told the people that these killings were most certainly from a creature they called the Non-Tinak, pronounced Non-Tinak. That's basically like a Bigfoot Sasquatch thing that lives in the forest. Story 8. Islam has this myth about the jinn, invisible creatures which can take the form of animals and humans. Apparently they favor snakes. The myth predates Islam and exists in Abrahamic as well as Hindu scriptures. We all know a kid-friendly depiction from the children's cartoon Aladdin from Disney called Genie. They're basically what you might call ghosts, but the belief in these creatures is uncontroversial in much of the world. Traveling in the deserts in North Africa and the Middle East, many people will talk of having met them as they would talk of meeting a stray cat or dog. Jinn are not innately evil or good, but can be one or the other, and are generally jealous of humans. Story 9. This is my favorite tinfoil hat theory: telepathy and remote viewing. Since UFOs are now openly discussed in Congress and by the military, I think that telepathy and remote viewing may be a UFO technology that interfaces with one's mind. This could also cause one to see things and dream things. The UFOs could be self-replicating robots controlled by artificial intelligence. Perhaps their goal is to try and figure out how to interface with humanity's minds to a certain level of quality so that they may give us information that their builders wanted to share. The society that created them could be long gone. Story 10. I genuinely believe there is a buried ancient human civilization that had engineering technology but was destroyed by unfortunate circumstances. Humans need not only be Homo sapiens, as we've only been around so long. Right there with you. Modern humans have existed for around 200,000 years. For 195,000 years, literally no one said, "Where these seeds fall, new plants grow. I wonder if I can put these seeds where I want to make new plants." It's absurd. 5,000 years ago wasn't the agricultural revolution, it was simply the most recent one. And that's how you get cities, or at least permanent settlements, which give rise to specialization of labor and ultimately advanced civilization. People are people and they do people things. Think of all the progress we've made in the last 100 years, the last 300 years, or the last 1,000 years. Seriously, in the span of 200,000 years, it never happened? I'm not buying it. Story 11. I feel like physics ability is real to some degree. Have you ever had a dream that comes true? I keep having small dreams of me doing something mundane, usually sitting somewhere thinking about something. And then a few weeks or months or years later, it happens, and my thought process matches up perfectly to the dream. I'm watching exactly what I saw in my dream, all with a sense of deja vu. Sometimes I'll try to warn myself of things that will happen. Once I warned myself of me and my girlfriend breaking up, and weirdly, I always forget the warning until it comes up again. Has anyone else had these types of dreams? Story 12, the multiverse or string theory for one. Atlantis is certainly plausible as well. An island nation a bit more advanced than others at the time, sunk by seismic activity, is very believable. And dragons, not the fire-spitting kind, but a large flying reptile with 4 legs is very possible, as well as dinosaur life still existing in the depths of the ocean. I'm not talking megalodons and crap, just some really old deep-sea fish. I mean, look at the coelacanth, an extremely old creature thought to be extinct, but it was rediscovered in 1938 or so. And let's not forget crocodiles, or alligators, don't remember which, are literal dinos. Same with the cassowary. Don't even know why I'm commenting. This is a throwaway account. Story 13. I think there is an Illuminati group out there who do manipulate things to gain desired long-term results. There are a lot of weird coincidences in history where had a person made a different decision, our history would have turned out completely different. Lee could have won the Battle of Gettysburg had he taken a hill that stood empty for days. Had he flanked, he could have escaped with his army relatively intact. He did neither because his scouts had left earlier. Had the South won at Gettysburg, winning the war would have been plausible. they had a pretty straight shot at DC. History would look a lot different had the Union lost the Civil War. Story 14, Atlantis is a very plausible myth. The oceans have risen quite a bit, and there's huge portions of human history that have just gone through various ways, either deliberately or otherwise. I also believe a technologically superior race, whether it be humans or other, did evolve before our current age and civilizations. There's a lot of land and sea on Earth that has not been explored or became covered in forest or ocean. Also, volcanic activity and earth crust movements could also reclaim cities or civilizations over vast periods of time. Water and plants are also a very destructive force if given enough time. Story 15, any form of extraterrestrial life out there. There's no way in a galaxy this big, with space being endless, we are the only living creatures. There's also another possibility that they are even more intelligent than us and have been studying us for years. They probably know more about us than we do about them, or we don't even know about their existence yet. It could explain people vanishing without a trace, not trying to imply that we should stop looking for missing people, because they could have been taken for furthermore testing so these beings could have more data on us and understand us more. I don't want to directly say aliens, because I too believe they are out there, but I believe it's not just humans and aliens, but something more intelligent and different. Story 16, Pumpkinhead. I'm working on a ranch and my boss's wife's sister is deathly afraid of Pumpkinhead. She claimed one time when she was home alone on the ranch, she encountered someone flickering with the lights. She looked outside to see a strange figure out in the pasture. She won't talk much about it, but the thought sorta sits in the back of my head when I'm working with the cows. Story 17. Ever since I was a kid in the 1970s, I've always had a fascination with the subjects of Bigfoot, the paranormal, and UFOs, in that order. I tried to read every book on those subjects I could get my hands on, and watched every movie or TV documentary I could possibly see. In the 1970s, the subject of Bigfoot was everywhere. My belief in ghosts was cemented when I experienced the ghost of my grandmother. My belief in UFOs was cemented when I unmistakably saw a UFO around 20 years ago. And I'm not talking about seeing a few mysterious lights in the sky about thousands of miles up, but a UFO that was pretty close to the ground, flying towards and over me. I don't think it's a crazy idea to think that there are planets out there, populated by living, breathing humanoids, whose civilizations are perhaps billions of years older than ours, which would explain why and how they're so much more technologically advanced than us, and can build crafts that can reach our planet while we managed to reach and put a man on the moon only 53 years ago. Story 18, Americans here, and I find space endlessly fascinating, but always thought people get really weird about the moon landing. I remember being a little taken aback at how ESPN lost their crap for a few days over the Steph Curry thing. Just seems like a more innocuous conspiracy to me yet. It feels like even people in more leftist circles will get weirdly confrontational and nationalist about it. I don't care enough to have a strong opinion either way, but considering the Cold War backdrop and the US government's streak of lying about some pretty consequential things at that time, it having been faked is fairly plausible in my opinion. Story 19, don't know about the Bigfoots and all those others, but where I came from, Kosovo, not that much is known about this country's wildlife, but I'm gonna spill some beans. First of all, there was recently in the 1950s sightings of short-faced bears which are now known as extinct, which are not. Some still believe they are in caves high in the mountains, and to be honest, I believe them. Why I believe them is because of this. As we all know, spiders are shy creatures, and there are many species that are not found. But evidently, the giant Goliath bird-eating tarantula, which is quite big, is small compared to what I saw here in Kosovo. And to clarify before I say this, I wasn't on any kind of drugs, alcohol, medication, or anything along those lines. And to top it all off, I saw this not alone, but with my dad. Plus, I was 13 years old. Me and my dad were walking around our house when I saw a spider that was about the size of a human head, and it was quicker than any kind of 8-legged spider I've seen. As soon as me and dad saw it, we looked at and it ran hella fast, and we looked at each other in disbelief, since he grew up in Kosovo and never saw anything of the sort. We still reminisce of those times and ponder as to how something so giant exists and can move that fast. And I know I saw it because I wasn't alone, I wasn't sleepy, and I was young, so I had no substances. Plus, the fact that Kosovo has hummingbirds, meerkats, and giant beetles and snails makes me believe it really was a new spider species unknown. This country is amazing, and I love it, and before anyone says anything, it was not a coconut crab. The spider had tiny legs, a giant abdomen which did not carry babies in its back, blue and red stripes on its back, and tiny fangs. Story 20, I think that there is life in the universe other than here. That is only based on probability, which is based on assumptions. The chances of ever meeting anything living are essentially zero, due to vast distances and vast timescales in the development of technology. There are a number of exoplanets near Earth where we could share information very slowly. Sending and receiving information would take years to decades. The closest are Proxima Centauri, Wolf 359, Lalande 21185, which have planets but are all red dwarf stars between 4 and 10 light years from Earth. Even if there is life with language and technology, we or they might not even realize that communication is possible. To put things in perspective, the universe as we know it is about 15 billion years old. The Sun and Earth are about 4.6 billion years old. The Sun will run out of hydrogen in 5 billion years, and the Earth and all life here will die. If all the stars once had planets with life, many of those will have ended either due to climate change, solar weather, and evolution. Many stars are so far away we can see light that they emitted nearly 100,000 years ago within the Milky Way. Some of those will have burned out, but we still see that ancient light. The furthest reaches of the universe are more than 14 billion light years away. Those galaxies and stars may no longer exist. Story 21. Atlantis, probably. 1. It is very possible for entire cities and parts and bits of land to be completely submerged underwater after natural disasters. A good example was the famous pirate port city of Port Royal. Port Royal sank into the sea after a giant earthquake, and the Egyptian city of Thonas Heracleion is another example. As for it being super advanced, I wouldn't believe that it was that super advanced as everyone exaggerated it to be. Most of the ocean is still left unexplored, so part of me has hope it is out there somewhere, but part of me thinks it's a myth, but that's just me. Story 22. Any of the so-called cryptids. Scientific and logical hubris tells us there's no way anything like Bigfoot, Yeti, or Nessie could possibly exist, but we're still discovering life in the deep ocean, not to mention the fact that we know the giant squid and colossal squid exist, yet sightings of both are so rare, we're still documenting them. Hell, we thought the coelacanth went extinct in the late Cretaceous. It's completely possible, read, likely. There are large animals either on land or in the water, and they're avoiding us. I would too. To deny this is to deny logic. Story 23. In World War II, shortly after nuclear weapons were beginning to be developed, every air force on both sides of the conflict began reporting unusual aircraft with impossible flight characteristics. These aircraft would follow or maneuver alongside aircraft of each side, never attacking and ignoring any attempt to shoot them down. They were described as silver orbs, or glowing balls. One of the popular names for these aircraft was Foo Fighters. Both sides assumed that these mysterious aircraft were some sort of enemy weapons program, or dismissed the reports. The flight patterns of these aircraft from almost 80 years ago are still not possible with today's technology. Ever since then, UFOs have been spotted all around the world. It's possible that the energy signatures of atomic research were detected at great distances and brought attention to us. We are just now at the beginning stages of learning how to manipulate gravitational fields at a highly advanced level. Such manipulation would be an answer for maneuverability questions. I'm not a tinfoil hat aliens believer, but even our government is convinced enough by the data to keep track of it. Story 24. I would probably say something that has to do with the ocean, or maybe like the Loch Ness monster. Cause with the ocean, I just feel like we haven't even explored like 5% of it. So there could definitely be some freaking sea creature around, just like our ancestors talked about it, but we never believe it because we haven't explored the whole ocean. Also Loch Ness, cause I just feel like it could be something really big, like sturgeon fish, and he doesn't want to look it up, because I guarantee you it could literally just be one of those things like to be around in some local lake and someone sees and be like, look at this huge beast. Story 25, hard to consider. But the myth or theory I'm currently obsessed with is the ancient land of Agartha. The tale tells the story of an ancient land that lies beneath Antarctica that has a very advanced civilization that might be hundreds of thousands of years above us. They say there are 7 entrances that connect our world to the world of Agartha. We currently only know 3 and speculate where the others might be. The first is obviously in the continent of ice, Antarctica, which is the original and fastest way to get to Agartha. The second is the pyramidal triangle. The third is the ancient Egyptian Sphinx. There's a hole under the Sphinx where the entrance supposedly lies untouched. Some speculate that the 4th entrance is on the North Pole. Most of these speculations come from the ancient maps that multiple ancient civilizations drew, with an Earth displayed as a hollow shell that has Agartha inside. Story 26. Skinwalkers, fairies, and other folklore that fits the bill. Let me explain why. Skinwalkers, mostly known by Native Americans, is a shape-shifting entity that can trick you and lead you off into the wilderness, where they take advantage of you, or also by shape-shifting into someone you know, or using the voice of someone you know. The same thing can be said with fairies, which is Irish folklore, which is also widely popular in Newfoundland, as is leprechauns. I also remember reading about Mexican folklore, in which their entity does pretty much the same thing. Point being, every region has their own folklore, and just about every region has a folklore which fits the description of your typical skinwalker. My thesis has been that the skinwalker does exist, especially reading up on Sherman Ranch. I'm open-minded about the paranormal, but every region had their own name and own take on the entities, so they named them something different. I personally grew up in Newfoundland, and I have many stories from others combined with my own personal experiences that I'd cock off as fairies, but I've come to call them skinwalkers, aka wendigos. Story 27, Premonitions. I have had a handful of times when I vividly dreamed about something happening, only for it to actually happen. The most recent example was a couple of years ago. I had an uncomfortably detailed dream about a death in the family of my literature teacher. I saw him standing outside the hospital with tears rolling down his face. I woke up from that dream feeling really uneasy, but I tried to slough it off like it was nothing. Then, in the middle of the homeroom that morning, a student from this particular teacher's homeroom rushed in unannounced. Before he could even say anything, I knew. As it turns out, my teacher and his wife had had a sudden late-term miscarriage. My teacher understandably was heartbroken and was never quite the same afterwards. He was one of the best teachers I've ever had, kind, funny, and supportive, the sort of teacher everyone wants to have. And so to have this happen to him was one of the saddest things I can remember happening in my school during the time I was there. And this was a K-12 school, but it was also so creepy because I had zero reason to have a dream about something so dark happening to this specific teacher. Everything about it haunts me to this day. I absolutely believe premonitions are real. Regardless of whether there's a scientific or spiritual explanation for them, they're spooky and often messed up crap. Story 28. Seeing as how there's a crap ton of ancient ruins deep in the ocean already, probably Atlantis. The advanced technology was probably like an early aqueduct system or something along those lines. Or even a really good type of ship, considering they would need those for an island civilization. They say advanced technology, and everyone immediately thinks they had crap like flying cars powered by thoughts. But what people don't remember is that ancient Greece was basically a bunch of farmers who took the ramblings of some girl who was force-fed drugs her whole life as the words of the gods. So for all we know, Atlantean advanced technology could have been anywhere from a slightly better version of the wheel to space travel. Story 29. In my opinion, any cryptids or mythical monsters. I've had encounters with ghosts which makes me believe there are things and forces we don't understand. It could be they live in 4D or a parallel reality. Besides, there are only 2 fears we're born with, a fear of heights and a fear of everything in the uncanny valley. Why would we need to be scared of things that appear human but not quite? What out there is impersonating humans and endangering us to the point of that being a fear we all have? Story 30. The Banshee, being part Irish. I have heard tales about it as a child. I grew out of it and stopped believing in it for a while. A banshee is supposed to scream when you are going into a situation where it is unlikely for you to come out alive. So, I was driving down the road on a rainy day, and I heard this blood-curdling scream in my ear that sent a shiver up my spine. There was no one behind me, so I slammed on the brakes before crossing at the intersections. Sure enough, a huge pickup truck comes speeding down the middle where I would have been and would have been hit. I sat there for a minute and I couldn't get the scream out of my head. Then I thought, banshee. I pulled into a gas station and called my dad's grandma, who had told me the stories as a child. I told her what happened, and to my shock, she chuckled and said, "My dear, you were warned and listened to the banshee. Your great-grandfather did not." Story 31, Dark Watchers. I went up to the Santa Lucia Mountains to be with my friend in her cabin for the weekend. Everything was fine during the day, totally normal. When night came, I woke up and decided to go to the kitchen for a snack. Looking through the window, I could see the figure of a man with glowing eyes in the trees. I freaked out and ran to my friend's bedroom and told her what I saw. She looked at me and said, "Oh, the Dark Watchers. Don't worry, they are just curious and won't do harm." I was stunned at what I had heard. I left the next morning, but made sure to say goodbye.